Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Witch's Tea, where we will be talking about mediumship. I'm Malorine of Moon Lady Divination on all platforms.
And I'm Violet of Violet the Green Witch on Instagram. If you just joined us on The Witch's Tea, each week we will discuss topics centered around witchcraft, magical practices, and everything beyond the veil. We bring magic and chaos into your life. So this week we're talking about mediumship. And Malorine, would you like to kick us off and tell us a little bit about your mediumship experience?
Sure. Mediumship. I mean, it's a big part of my practice. I didn't realize how big of a part of it was until I know you even talked about it. I didn't really have a name for it. I knew I was like talking to beings and entities that weren't in front of me physically. But going into like doing more of my witchcraft practice and psychic work, I started saying like, okay, yeah, this is a difference. There's a difference between intuition, mediumship, psychic work. You know, there are differences. And then kind of naming it was like, okay, this is important. But yeah, it's such a huge part of the work that I guess that we do, you know, just in general. I mean, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And same, like, I didn't ever give it a name for a long time. I didn't even know there was a difference between being a psychic and a medium. I just, for a very long time, I was just like, I'm just a psychic. And I kind of thought like all psychics could be mediums, but I didn't realize that not all psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychics. Which can be, that's like a tongue, it's like a tongue twister, right? But yeah, that's like something that I just was never even aware of, that those are two like different kinds of gifts and or functions.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I just started seeing dead people. I started seeing ghosts in my grandmother's house. So that's and I was also at the same time having like psychic experiences. Like I would have prophetic dreams all the time when I was a child and stuff like that. But I didn't know what to do with that, and as I got older, I started understanding it more. But I never understood how they went together and how important they are together, and like how my psychic gifts actually inform my mediumship abilities, because I am more of a mental medium, which I use all my clairs. So I receive messages from spirit generally through clairvoyance and clairaudience are my two major ones. And then clairsentience would be the other, because I definitely get a lot of feelings, especially emotional stuff. And that's sort of usually the clue of a lot of the times when I am communicating with a spirit, to what, what's the message, what's the underlying message that they want to convey. And it's usually very much for me a feeling thing. And I think it's because I'm such a emotional human that, like, to me,
Mm-hmm.
feeling is one of those like key factors in mediumship. How about you?
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, talking about the emotions, I feel like we haven't really like we should probably name like our big three, because I feel like you have like the Pisces energy, you have that bring the Cancer energy. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that only water signs can be clairsentient, but I feel I've noticed that it's predominantly about water, like heavy water placements tend to be very clairsentient.
Yeah.
But yeah, the feeling is so interesting you say that, because like yeah, a lot of times it's kind of like hard to name. And as I've gotten like older and practiced more, I can definitely like, I always tell people like if I'm using, say, the Akashic records, or if I'm just using, I can tell where the energy is coming from. So if it's like, from someone's ancestors, they're normally on my left side. And like if it's just, I don't know, we're contacting someone else who are outside the family, it can show up on the right or behind me. It's like really interesting how it kind of the information kind of shows up. And especially like I'm kind of using the Akashic records, we'll talk about a bit later on, but it's just another way to access your guides and working with angels and the masters of the records. And I see it as like a neutral space. It's like a place I can go to. It's like a like a safe place, and the guides and those messages can come in a very kind of I don't say regulated. It's hard. I don't know what the word is, but every time in the records, I'm really able to discern where things are coming from and who it's coming from. So that was always something that stood out. And like you said, the emotional aspect, the clairsentience, being able to feel what's happening. For me, it's usually quite strong when I'm doing mediumship. I don't know why, but it tends to be like the strongest one. When I was younger, like you said, for me, clairvoyance, like I can see them. I saw them very like easily when I was younger. Now I see it like more smoke or kind of, the quintessential Ghostbusters spirits, the little apparitions. I see those more than I sometimes see faces.
Oh,
which is
you
always
actually
interesting.
do you see them like with your eyes, like with your eyeballs, not with your third eye?
With my eyeballs.
With your eyeballs? You see them with your eyeballs?
It started opening up more. It was a lot. I don't know, maybe because we're kids, we're just very open. And,
yeah,
we could talk about this more, but I feel like we both had those, and we were at the same age, like 5, which is really interesting. Both in our grandparents' houses.
Yes.
But yeah, I used to be able to actually see the people. But now I can't, I mean, it's just more like smoking. It's like smoky images. When I'm doing mediumship, when it comes to like psychic work, if they're showing me a scene, it shows up as like a movie trailer, which is hard to explain.
No, totally. That's kind of like what happens to me too.
Yeah.
And that's that's clairvoyance, like where you're getting shown basically like a movie. Or like movie trailer, because it's just like the snippets, not like a full on like executed movie.
Yeah, that's the best way. That's the way I space my clients. I'm like, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you what I see. And literally, I'm explaining. It's like a movie trailer. Literally, it's like starring blah, blah, blah. And this in time, this is what happened. And it's like, I'm seeing it. And it's just like people are popping up in images. And it's really kind of exciting. But I'm glad that makes sense to you, because I was like, I kind of see it it's like a movie.
No, that's exactly, and that's exactly how I describe it too. It's like somebody showing me a movie, and the projector's sort of like sitting maybe about like 6 to 7 inches away from my face, like slightly above my head. That's the way I see it. But actually, I just want to like, just for our audience, so when we talk about mediumship, we're not only talking about talking to those who have passed on, but mediumship in general can mean also talking to any being in spirit. So it could be the angels, it could be spirit guides, as Malorine mentioned. It could be, the fae, basically anybody that is not in body form, we can communicate with. That is mediumship, because I think a lot of people only think about mediumship as like, ghost hunters, that sort of thing, like paranormal investigators, that sort of stuff, or, the Long Island medium, that's just a portion of it. So I think that's important for people to understand, because, a lot of folks have this ability, including just like when they have their meditations and they say, they received the download or whatever, they're not even understanding that they are having a mediumship experience, And I think it's important people to understand that they do have, and a lot of people have it, because it's so important, because it's part of our spiritual progression, right? And and for witches too, like it's such an important tool to work even with your magic and everything, to be able to call in, right? Call in the goddesses. When you're calling in the goddesses and working with them, or gods, or when you're calling in any guides or anything, that is mediumship. And I think that's kind of important to understand, that it's not just talking to dead people.
I mean, they're cool. I mean, no offense to any dead people that are listening right now. But yeah, I mean, that's all well and good. But yeah, I feel like, yeah, definitely it runs the gamut. It's definitely yeah, being able to access all of this. And I feel like,
Yeah.
just determining that the difference between psychic and mediumship, it's such a fine line. Like it's almost like you were saying, with not all psychics are mediums and not all mediums, but all mediums are psychic.
Right.
It's like almost like all cupcakes are cake, but not all cake are cupcakes. It's kind of
I
like that.
know. I know.
It's it's such a fine line, and I've seen a lot of people mix up, which is fine, because definitions are really hard to, universal definitions are really hard to determine. But yeah, I mean, what do you think would be like a defining factor for you in terms of the difference between a psychic and a medium?
Um, I think it's more when I'm getting information directly from a spirit. So any, non-corporeal being, like for me that is the definition of mediumship for me. Being able to receive messages, doesn't matter in what form they are, but specifically given to me either by guides or by an ancestor or a lot of also I've had experiences where, it's literally people who have not crossed over, need help, and they are reaching out. And, and in those cases, sometimes I've actually seen them with my actual eyeballs, which, is never fun. Never fun. Um, but I think that's what defines it the most. Where when I consider myself at least the psychic portion of myself, even though I call in my guides and stuff, but I'm calling them in for protection, not necessarily for information. Um, for me, that's more being a psychic where I can just sort of like pull information from, the universe to share with whoever I'm reading for versus when I'm directly connecting to my guides or someone else's guides, and that to me that's very different. And I could feel the difference because I can feel, and I think that that's the thing is like, and when we talk about feeling again, I can feel the presence of beings around me giving me that information, or I can hear them. Sometimes I can hear words and stuff being told to me. So that's the difference between psychic and mediumship for me. So how about for you?
Yeah, I feel definitions definitely hit. I mean, the mediumship, I definitely feel like it's yeah, it's the corporeal. It's always such a hard word.
Yeah, it's
Corporeal.
really
I don't
hard
know.
to say.
The beings, the entities, the beings, and I feel like yeah, and it can also include like angels and beings that were not in a human form for
Mhm.
mediumship. But I feel like for me, the psychic energy too as well can definitely connect with people who are able to see the past and the future. Um, because when I'm doing mediumship exclusively, that does include that, but I feel like psychic work is definitely like using past life regression or being able to see ahead, it's like
Mhm.
premonitions or foretelling. I feel like that kind of falls under the psychic realm where
Mhm.
that is not really particularly mediumship. So I feel like we were saying like where yeah, someone who's a psychic doesn't necessarily have to be a medium and they don't coincide. Where I feel like, the fact that we're seeing ourselves as both psychic and mediums, we can hold both spaces. I love to kind of go dive into the past, maybe a bit too much. So I do feel like sometimes it's good to have that grounding. Yeah, sometimes within mediumship, because it's kind of like what's happening right here, right now, like who's around, and they kind of come almost like they come to you, or you kind of like they're in space already. But for me, I think that's a big determining factor that mediumship doesn't normally include that past, present energy. It's more the beings, where psychic work can include both, in a sense.
Yeah,
I hope
yeah,
that
no,
makes sense.
absolutely. No, it totally makes sense. I mean, there is, I feel like some mediumship, at least in some of my readings, that while I'm doing a psychic reading, I might get information from someone's guides that will like sort of interject while I'm in the middle of like doing a psychic reading. All of a sudden I'll hear something and I'm just like, thanks. Um,
Yeah,
but for
I
like, and
love
like when I do
the.
past life readings, I don't have I don't consider it a mediumship. I do connect with the goddesses that I work with and the guides, but again, only for protection and for guidance, not necessarily for information. And I think that's the difference for me is like, where is the information coming from? Is it coming from spirit, or is it coming from, universal knowledge from the collective, and I think those are two different informations, or from the Akashic records. To me, those are two very different sources of information, right? Like feel like it's the difference of between going to a library and reading a book for yourself, or someone telling you the story. I feel like that's like a good analogy for the way, at least in my experience, what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing though is like, I've definitely have had people who are trance mediums or evidential mediums tell me the type of mediumship I do is not a valid mediumship, which I find to be super annoying because it's completely valid. And I've had to like step away from that. And I think it's only in the last like year or two that I especially after reading a lot of the books that I've been reading on mediumship, that I can validate myself and say, no, you are a medium, just your mediumship is a different kind of mediumship, because for some reason, especially trance mediums have this thing like, oh, if you're not in, like if you're not allowing the spirit to step in, you're not a medium. I can most certainly tell you that I can do trance. I do not like it, and I will not allow it. I'm like, nope, no one's stepping in this body, only me. That's it. I don't like the idea.
I would like yeah.
Yeah, not for me.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I just don't like the idea of relinquishing control over to a spirit to my body. Like, who knows what they'll do?
Exactly. I mean, I'm just interested to like, I mean, you don't have to like obviously name names, but to tell you that what you're doing is not valid, like that's crazy. Like, how is trans mediumship the only form of like for I guess for them, but like you said, you lose a sense of autonomy, and the whole point. I mean, what I feel, especially with mediumship and psychic work, you really have to have a sense of authority. Almost like in a classroom, in a sense.
Exactly.
When I used to teach, and that's one of the first things that they teach us in education classes, that you have to have a certain level of. It's not about coming in being the big bad wolf and like listen to me or else. It's more just like knowing where you stand, having a sense of your identity, like being very grounded, and just go, okay, this is what. If you're coming in kind of fluid and like, yeah, jump into my body, hang out, that's not like, to me, I wouldn't like the same. I wouldn't want them to willingly come in there and like just play around and hang out. And I'm like, if you have something to say, tell me, and I'll be the middleman, and I will translate it to other people. But we're not playing this in and out game. I feel like that is that should be almost, I don't want to say like last resort, but I don't even think that should be the first thing you do. It is. I don't know. I'm just curious, like why would say that? It just is weird to me.
I know. I mean, like, and with evidential mediumship, you're providing proof, which you can do that regardless, even when you're, doing it as a clairvoyant, being a medium, you can still provide proof of, if you're talking to someone's loved one who's passed, you can still get that information. I don't understand why you need to have like that direct link or a direct, almost like giving yourself over to that person, to the spirit, because you have to protect your soul. You need to protect your aura. You need to protect all that stuff. And like, to then literally just like go like, okay, I'm putting all my wards down. I'm not protecting myself in any way, and I'm just letting you in, is foolish. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. It's foolish.
Yeah.
And it could have repercussions in your life, including making you physically ill. So anyway, I'm going to stop bitching about it, but it's something that really, really annoyed me. And the thing is, like, I'm one of those people too, that like, sometimes when people make comments like that, then I feel invalidated. So I start like doubting myself, and then I need to like do like research basically, because that's the way I kind of work with everything. Is like I have to do a lot of research, and did a lot of research, and I was just like, wait a second, this is completely valid, So I finally feel like, oh, this is valid, and I don't understand why I even felt that way, considering I've been having these experiences since I was a kid. I started seeing, uh, you know, beings or shadow people, which I never considered them good shadow people, when I was 5 years old, which I know we haven't talked about in here, but that was like my first experience, and that alone should be validating enough that, and then like the fact that my own family was just like, oh yeah, like my aunt and my grandmother said that they would see the same thing, and that's validation enough to tell you that you are a medium.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah, it's and I wonder too, I mean, like you said, I think it's, just in any field, I feel people definitely try to cut down other people's experiences to make themselves, feel validated. And I feel like that happens in everything. It happens in accounting, it happens in if you're a librarian, it happens if you're, yeah,
Yeah.
if you're, working with other psychics or witches. So I think, and it's one of those points, like it's interesting you said like you like it's like I'm a big researcher, like I'm an
Yeah, I know.
anthropologist and that's what I
Yeah.
do. But I've no I'm all about research, but it's really interesting. The one time like I don't actually do research, it's interesting because I always like the books that you recommend, and we'll have in our show notes the books that we recommend for mediumship. But I started reading up on this, and it's like because the time that I don't actually research is when I'm doing spiritual intuitive work, because it's like I don't know why. As like in astrology and everything else, I researched the hell out of it. Like I'm always like reading the books and doing the things. And I'm like, when I'm doing my mediumship or intuitive work, I just want to feel it. I just want to feel. I just want to feel. I don't want to think. So yeah, I don't know if it's like maybe my Aquarius energy, like my brain has to turn off just for a little while. um,
No,
I don't know how you feel about that. I don't know, like when you're in it, how do you feel?
I totally understand. I mean, like for me, the research is more about validation of my gifts, which, it's just that, self-doubt thing that a lot of, I think, psychics and mediums go through. But and also like the research too for me, when it comes to mediumship is just more about seeing what other people's experiences have shown them, things that I might not know. Like even as an experienced witch of like over 30 years, there are things, like there are other other protection tools and stuff like that that like I don't necessarily have used in the past. So it's good to have it as part of your arsenal when working with spirits. And especially, I've definitely been called over the last year to, I think, work with more earthbound spirits, which is something that we can get into about my experiences and your experiences too, because I think people might be really interested in hearing these. And for me, stopped, or I sort of put up a block to any earthbound spirit for many, 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 many years, because I had a really, really scary, terrible experience. Actually, two, when I was young, and didn't know how to properly protect myself, right? So, which is something I highly recommend for anybody that's doing mediumship. It doesn't matter if you're only contacting the good spirits. The other spirits are always waiting in the wing because they either want your attention to help them, or or they're just a-holes, just like they were in human form, right? So, and you have spirits like that, or they're really bad, like rapists and murderers still exist in, earthbound spirits. Like that doesn't necessarily change them until they cross over. Spirits will continue to be who they were in this lifetime. So for that, and unfortunately I had encounters with such beings, and that sort of really turned me off of mediumship for a long time. I got really scared. Um, so I think since it's been happening more and more over the years, and including where I get woken up by spirits and I see them like literally standing right next to me, I had to start uh just understanding how other people deal with this. And that's kind of like also why I went down the road of reading more about it. But when, like when I'm doing other kinds of like readings and stuff where I'm just calling in, guides and stuff like that, that's just really 100% like you're saying, just about feeling for me more than anything. I
Mhm.
and that's and my feeling is that's my like my bell, my alarm bell. If it's like actual good guy, like a high vibrational spirit versus one that is up to no good kind of thing. And I shut that down immediately if I get that alarm going off going, this is not the right being that you should be talking to. And I'm just like, nope, goodbye. Bye-bye. You're out of here. You're not allowed in here. And then I put up like extra protections. Um, but anyway, let's talk about our past experiences. I would love to hear some of your stories.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely want to hear, like you said, those two instances. I'm
Yeah.
curious. It's interesting too, you said about like, the spirits that can show up. And when you said like, rapists and, like I've actually connected with some racist ghosts. I call them colonizer ghosts. Just joking, but that's
Oh,
in
you
my
said
mind what I call
I
them.
said rapist, not racist, but racists also show
Oh
up.
no. No, yeah. Yeah. No, I've actually, it's interesting because I'm house sitting right now and I'm upstate New York and I'm in the Hudson Valley. And it's really interesting. I've traveled a lot and I've noticed there are some places that are really very heavily active. And Hudson Valley is one of those places. And I pick up all types of beings here. And I feel like it's like almost this like ongoing battle with like, the maybe like the pilgrim or colonizing ghosts and
Mhm.
like the native ghosts in the area. And since the house that I'm in, my story about this, where I've been here a few times and I've house sitted, and it's an older house, like an older farmhouse, and I know that I've picked in come right away. I saw the apparition when I came in, and there's this ghost that's here, and he does not like that I'm here, and it's fine. I'm like, I can handle that. I can deal with this. But I would ask, and I was like, well, what is it? Like, what don't you like about me? He was just like everything, and I was like, okay, like let's not be too personal. And then finding out eventually that it's like literally yeah, he's like a full blown like racist, and I was just like, and I have also
That's
got energy.
insane.
It's crazy, and it's just like still, I'm like still in the afterlife, you're still doing this, and I feel like as well, I feel like he might be like super Christian too because I have gotten instances where they just don't like me because of what I do. So I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but you're going to treat me with respect when I'm here. That's for sure. You don't have to go home, but you gotta, you gotta I'll be kind to you, be kind to me. So definitely, I mean, I'm in this house right now, and he's calmed down because I pretty much set those boundaries. But yeah, like you said, like I mean, I have been like reading these books and kind of getting new ideas for protection. So it's definitely helpful. I feel like I've always been, as a solitary witch, you're kind of always just like doing things on our own. And I feel like
Exactly.
even just more so the last few years that now that people have really come out and said like declared who they are and what they do, you actually have spaces like this where you can actually talk. Like I could talk to you. I can
Right.
you can listen to other podcasts and other people. And before I'm like growing up, we didn't have that. It was pretty much you were out for yourself. Or if you're
Exactly.
part of a coven, which I've never been coven, no, never been coven life, which is fine. But yeah, it was just more like I was like, I'll just kind of wing it, just winging it, like I had my great grandmother who would help me with some stuff, but other than that, it was just trying to figure it out on my own. But yeah, it's definitely helpful to just like set those boundaries and know how to. But yeah, that's my experience, which I'm still kind of experiencing at this moment as we speak. But what about yours?
For me, like I said, I really didn't know about protecting myself, except the only thing I do remember is like anytime that I would tell my mom that this stuff was happening when I was young, she would just told me to pray to the angels. Which I didn't realize that was a actual, like now as an adult, I actually know like if you call on the archangels, literally there's no spirit that's going to hang around because they're so high vibrational and so bright that other spirits can't be in their presence unless they're of the same vibration or in that realm of vibration. And just a side note, even though I grew up Catholic, I am not Catholic. I'm very much a pagan witch. So, but you know, you can still work with the angels. It's not a Christian thing. The angels are for everyone. They don't have a denomination or a specific religion. That is humans who gave them that. But anyway, they're great allies when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I definitely now, even in my practice, when I go to clear homes or when I'm doing clearings for myself, or if I feel like I've picked up something, that's usually one of my go-to is calling in the archangels, especially the Archangel Michael, to help deal with some unruly spirit. But you know, when I was a kid, I would just see like the shadow man in my grandmother's house, and I didn't know what to do about it. I'd like be coming down the stairs in the middle of the night to like get a drink of water or something, and then like I literally freeze on the stairs because I would see him. My grandmother had her altar. She had one right next to the stair, like one in front of the staircase and one next to it, which I thought was, now as an adult I think about it, interesting because that's where he tend to hang out. He would always tend to hang out there, and I would see his shadow. God, it's actually giving me goosebumps because he freaked me out so much as a child. And like I don't remember him trying to do anything, but his presence wasn't a positive one. Like it wasn't like your friendly ghost at home. It was definitely, there was like a heaviness to his energy. And my grandmother and my aunt also would see him, and they told me, you know, that same thing, that they didn't feel like it was like a good thing. So that's kind of like where my mom would just tell me like, well, just pray to the angels and you know, and he won't come to you. Which is true. Like, and I was totally protected that way. And I think because I've been so in contact with my guides and everything, and I didn't even know that I was when I was a child, I definitely have been protected by my guides for a long time. But I did have instances later on in my life that really freaked me out. So one instance I had was when I was a teenager. I was maybe about 17 years old. Um, I was at home. My parents had gone away, and it was like, I think the first time my parents left my sister and I alone at home. And, you know, the normal teenager throws a party when their parents are gone out of town. But you know, the little weirdo goth girl has a seance in her house. But I did it for a
Oh
very
my God.
specific reason, is because
Yeah.
I kept being woken up by a spirit in my home, and he kept coming into my dreams as well, which is something that spirits tend to do to me, is come into my dreams, since my dreams are so vivid and so like part of my life that I think that they know to use my dreams to come in. So now when I go to sleep, I actually protect myself from that. But so I asked this group of friends to come over, and it was, I don't know if I was a teenager, actually. I'm trying to remember. I mean, like I was young and I was living at my parents' house. But it was like, so a friend of mine, and I think her brother, her cousin or something came over, and then another friend from high school. And then I want to say there was like one more person. I wanted to have the seance. We had the seance in my room. My sister was just like, fuck this. I'm not being part of this. I'm going to be in my room. I'm going to bed. And then we started having the seance, and my one friend, she had no idea that she was a medium. She was like a trance medium, and she didn't know it. So she started channeling this man that I knew that was in my home. And we got a name and everything, including a last name, which is usually not a thing that you get. Last names, for some reason, always tend to be hard to get. I don't know if that's something, an experience that you have too. And so my friend, her voice even kind of changed, where it dropped a few registers and was sort of gravelly when she was talking. And we found out that this man was keeping his daughter from crossing over, his teenage daughter, So
Mm.
apparently his wife left them because I think he was like an obsessive, crazy abuser. So but left the daughter behind, and she was a teenager. She was, I think, 15 years old. Um, and he would, you know, sexually abuse her, and also in real life. And then in after they passed, he kept her. I don't know the circumstances around their deaths, but I'm assuming she died young because her spirit was still like showing as a young person, as a 15-year-old girl. And we saw her like in this dark space, and every time she tried to leave it, her father would pull her back and keep her in it. So he was keeping her prisoner
Mm.
in the other on the other side, and I didn't know that was a thing, and now I know that's a thing, that other spirits can keep other spirits from crossing.
Mhm.
And my my sister, actually, in the middle of the seance, runs into the room, and she's like, I don't know what the hell is happening. She's like, my stereo's turning on and off. My lights are turning, they're flickering and everything. She's like, oh my God, I was like, just come and sit with us. I was like, so, like you'll be protected. But we didn't do any like form of protection, nothing when we did this because we didn't know. So then, like, after the seance and everything, we didn't do anything. We didn't like, I think we helped the girl cross over. So we helped the girl cross over because one of my friends sort of like, I think, distracted the other spirit, like her father, while the other one of us helped the girl cross over. He was furious, and I had to live in that house. He was furious. Um, so at the end of that night, like none of us could like wanted to be alone. So two of my friends stayed over. And my other friend went home, and then like we all literally, my sister, me, and one of my friends slept on our pull-out couch together, the three of us. And then like our male friend was like on the floor sleeping. And we all had the same dream. We all had the dream. He came into our dream, and he like basically tormented us in our dreams that night. All of us had the exact same name. I mean, same dream, and we got his name, his daughter's name, the whole thing through that dream. And then my parents came back, and I had to confess to because I can never lie to my mother. I can never lie. I'm not a liar. I just don't like it. And I needed to tell my mother what happened. And my mother was just like, what? She was just like, what did you do? What did you do? She's like, you can't play with those things. I was like, well, I wasn't playing. This man was bothering me while I was sleeping. So I was trying to figure out what to do about it. So after that, for the next few days, I slept on my sister's floor in her bedroom because she was scared and I was scared. And things kept happening. Like she would get sleep paralysis. She felt like somebody was holding her down. We watched a cup of pencils literally be dragged across her drafting table. Then we would get woken up in the middle of the night, and we would see this like bright, weird green light coming through the bottom of the door. And my parents were asleep, and that light didn't exist in our home. So we knew that there was something. We were just like freaking out. This happened like, I don't know, for a good amount of time. And that was like one of the worst experiences I had, where there was like a lot of physical stuff happening. Um,
Mhm.
I don't remember how it ended. Um, but anyway, that was like one of my experiences that really left me sort of like, I don't really like contacting spirits kind of thing, you know? Um, but
Sounds like a
anyway,
movie.
yeah, no, it totally sounds like a movie. And I'll share some other stuff, but I actually want to hear one of your stories.
Yeah, that sounds like I'm sure we'll probably see that movie coming out. Ouija 2, like Ouija board 2. It's like the unouijing, I don't know. But oh, that sounds, I can almost imagine. I was like, who would play the guy, like
Yeah.
some really, maybe like guy like the guy who plays Freddy Krueger. I could see him playing a really good villain in that. Yeah, I can see the movie already. Sorry. I was like
No, it's
seeing it. I was like,
okay.
oh,
That's
I
okay.
would
And I
write
actually
that script.
I still remember their last name. It was Tate.
Tate. And
Mhm.
did you look him up? Did you look them up and see
I
if you
did, but
found anything on
it
them?
was it was like, the 1980s. There wasn't a lot of resources to look people up. So, I
Exactly.
mean, I
Yeah.
could, yeah. So, like, I couldn't find, like, records of someone, who passed with their name. I can't remember the father. I can't remember their first names, but I do remember the last name T, because it was just like such a, like you think about the Sharon Tate, right? So, like, that's kind of like what made me always remember, but I can't remember their first names. But I did try to look it up, and my friends actually tried to, and we just couldn't find any information. So they must have lived
I was,
on the property,
mhm.
but not necessarily in that house, because that was like a newish house.
Mm, okay. So they probably, yeah, maybe something was knocked down and they were just on the land.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. Like being an archivist, I've like learned like you can go to like, there's parts of the library that have these references, especially in New York. They keep an amazing detail account of certain blocks. They have like whole like the registers and these old fashioned like humongous books with like the land deeds and like who owned the land and things like that.
Mhm.
So this is something I had to do working as an archivist, and it just kind of fueled my research. I was like, I'm just gonna keep going down the rabbit hole. But wow, that sounds really scary. I'm glad that you got her out. I mean, that's wow.
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
sure
it could
he's
be like a
still there
poltergeist. Mhm.
because we didn't get him out, but we got her out. She needed to cross.
Yeah.
It was just like not fair to her.
It's interesting you said like, with your mom, like some things we just know, like inherently, like your mom was saying to just pray to the angels. And I just feel like, a lot of times, especially like I grew up Catholic, a lot of things that my great grandmother, who was she's from Trinidad and she was a Shango Baptist. So still a Baptist church, but they kind of like say worship, just a weird word, but the Orisha Shango. So she kind of, dabbled in both areas. And yeah, I mean, it's just interesting how a lot of the Christian or Catholic practices were, as you talked about in the first episode, that it transfers over, especially in the Caribbean and in
Mhm.
colonized countries. That's a big focus for what we do. Like, I mean, even like you're saying like your mother said to pray, and my great grandmother told me to curse them out. I remember I was 5, and similar idea. We lived in like an old Victorian house in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and it's a really old house. I remember growing up as a child, and we would play in the house, and it had all these secret passageways and like these doors that were open to nowhere, and it was really really creepy. But as a kid, I remember we found this old newspaper article. It was like stuffed in the wall, and it was like from the
Oh
1930s or
my
something like
god.
that. It was like crazy stuff. I mean, this house is just like, it was like even like the stairs, like everything's just really like, these Victorian homes, these big grand staircases, but then like these really like um secret open ways. Like it was like you open a door and it's like a closet, but you have to pick up the bottom, and it's actually a stairway that leads down somewhere. Like
Oh
it's still
wow.
there. So this house is where I grew up, and it was. My room, of course, was under the attic, of course, and similarly, I was about 4 or 5, and I would,
And you were
and
up in the attic at 4 or 5 years old?
I know the room I had was underneath the attic, but I was
Oh,
directly
underneath it.
underneath it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, the attic was a whole floor, but the opening for the attic was in my room, of course.
Oh,
It's like, of course, why would they put me anywhere else?
those are the
And the
scariest
bathroom was right
too.
next to my room. It is. And then the attic up there, I mean, we've refurbished it since, but it was such a creepy, I mean, the lights would go off and on because there was this long switch you had to pull to get the light to come on.
Mhm.
And when you're in the attic all the way, the light would come off. And I'm like, come on. Really? Like the scariest place, and you want to take the lights off. The attic was like a whole other place. But
Oh my god.
in this room, like the bathroom was next door, and in the middle of the night, if someone was in the bathroom, the light would come on, and you can see the door close, and you could see the light go in and go out. So I would see that all night, and I'm thinking like, and the light was really bright, and I was like, it was so bright, and I would complain in the morning, at breakfast going for school, and I'm like, who keeps using the bathroom in the middle of the night? And they're like, what are you talking about? No one. We didn't leave our rooms. And I'm like, and then they thought I was like losing it. Like, oh, you're just dreaming. And I'm like, no, I wasn't dreaming. I know I saw the lights going in and out. And then started getting visits from these beings. So they would stand at the foot of my bed and just watch me sleep. And I would see
That's
them
not
because the light
creepy.
would come on off and on. Yeah, I was like, no, this is at 5 years old. This is perfect. What I would need to see. They wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't do anything. They'll just sit there and stare at me. And I was like, okay, perfect. And they were always, and I remember that too. One of the guys was wearing kind of like this ruffle shirt. And I told my grandmother, my mother, and they was like, okay, you're just dreaming. Told my great grandmother, and she was like, okay, she pulled me to the side and she was like, okay, you are seeing, these are actual beings. I don't mean to scare you, but these are ghosts. And you need to curse them out. When they come to your room, curse. And I was like, I can't curse. And I was like, I can't. And she was like, I give you permission to curse. You tell them to,
What did she tell
yeah.
you to say?
She was like, tell them to get the fuck out of my room, get the fuck out of my house, and all sorts of stuff. And I was like, 5 years old. I was like, I can't say that. And she was like, you got to say it. You have to be, because that's the whole thing, having that authority, being
Yeah.
strong and letting them know you're not going to walk over me. And I was just like, she's like, you have to do it. You have to do it. She was like, almost like yelling at me. You have. And I was like, okay. So like, I was like, you get the fuck out of my room. And they were like, they were still there. And I was like, get the fuck out of my room. And I kept screaming it. And eventually they came a couple more nights and then eventually they stopped. Or they would come and they wouldn't do the whole standing over my bed thing. But yeah, I mean, I have a whole bunch of stories in that house. They definitely try it. They tried a few times to, I don't know if it was like to possess me or what it was, but I feel like the spirits know who the mediums are.
Absolutely.
They know, and they show up to us because like in the house, like my sister and my brother, they never experienced any of this, and I was like, why are they coming to me? And my great grandmother was like, well, because they know, like it's like almost having like a big sign over your head and with a big arrow that's pointing down. And
Like,
it's
anywhere you
here's
go.
a party.
Anywhere you go. And sometimes I think they
Exactly.
literally, I think they must text each other or something going like, oh, the girl that lives at this place, go see her. She can hear you. She can see you too.
And the thing is, I mean, at least, but and if you picked up all this stuff when you were with them, but at the time, I just wasn't really interested. I was just so scared. I was like, I don't care what message you have for me. I don't want to hear anything you have to say because I'm scared out of my mind right now. Eventually, getting older, even now, like I know that, you said they come with messages, and I'm also very discerning, especially when we're doing readings. I tell people this all the time. It's not that all of our ancestors they're not unreliable, but I do like to be wary when it comes to earthbound or human spirits that were human before, because I like to call them the unreliable narrator. That makes sense. Where sometimes it's like talking to someone now, like giving advice, like they're going to give you advice through their lens. So I'm always very like careful when I'm getting information from like someone's aunt or someone's like, okay, take it with a grain of salt. Thank you for that. But I'm just going to double check with Michael. I'm just going to double check with, just to make sure what you're saying is accurate, because yeah, it's like they're not like the best sometimes, not the best, but they like to put in their 2 cents a lot of the times, but not all the time it's like accurate. So that was just one thing like I noticed as I got older, like that discernment, and just I mean, when I was younger, I wouldn't dare, like I was so afraid of them, but now it's just like, all right, calm down on to Sandy. let's save your ideas for another time. I mean, I still listen, but I'm just very discerning when it comes to human-based spirits or spirits that were human.
Same.
I don't know.
I definitely find that, like, at least now, when I'm doing readings, even if it's a reading for myself or something like that, and even if I'm using just a pendulum or something, I ask a lot of specific questions to make sure that it's not a earthbound spirit pretending to be a spirit guide, because a lot of them like to do that, and some of them actually think it's funny.
Yeah.
Or it's a way for them to get your attention, right? So, but like I get that feeling anyway, like if it's like the person or the being I asked to speak to or not, I get an actual feeling, like I get an alarm basically going like, this doesn't feel right. But when somebody does come in, like you're saying, that even in someone's ancestor, I try to always call in a benevolent ancestor, and I word it that way because I want to make sure, that it's someone who is high vibrational that is going to give me some accurate information and is not going to give some bias information, right? Um,
Mhm.
Even with that, I've had experiences where, you know, some jerk spirit, decides to, come on in, and like you have to, like you said, you have to get very like command, like almost like in a commanding voice and like very
Mhm.
authoritative to get them to leave, because you're like, you're not welcome here. You need to move on. I'm not speaking with you. And if like they will not leave, I shut the whole thing down and that's it. And
Mhm.
also sometimes I will, if they get to be too pestery, then I will be like, okay, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, I need you to come in here and get the spirit out of here because I can't do my work. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think definitely getting older helps build that discernment, like you're saying.
for sure. And even like you said, I get, definitely ancestors, definitely a lot of well-meaning
Hmm.
ancestors. And it's like, yeah, you imagine like, the sweet grandmother who, yes, has good intentions, but yeah, I'm always a little bit like careful, like when they're giving advice or yeah, like where is it coming from, like what was their story. I like to always explain, like kind of explore, okay, are you giving me something based from your lens, are you giving it yeah, for the highest good of this person. So that's always, yeah, I'm always like, not that I don't trust the ancestors, I don't trust guides or anything, I mean the earthbound spirits, but yeah, I think like that discernment always is, again, something that you get through practice for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that, the newer witches or newer psychics can't access this information, but I feel like it's definitely over time, like I was saying, where I was able to discern where messages are coming from and who's saying it.
Right.
Even being able to pick up the energy. I know when Michael's there, like Michael takes on, he's just like, he takes in the whole room. So I know it's Michael. I know Michael has arrived, that kind of thing. And it's like something that you have to learn over time and like maybe doing constant sessions. I don't know if it's like, it's a mixture of like age and also actually doing the sessions regularly.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I was gonna say
I
that I think
definitely
it's
can sometimes get
experience.
fussy. Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
for
experience.
sure.
Like you're saying, I think experience makes a huge
Mhm.
difference. Like the more you do it, the
Mhm.
more, because I think you have to learn sort of like the language, right? That for yourself, like not only but like the language of how you interpret like the warning signs, or the benevolent, like a benevolent spirit versus a non-benevolent spirit. Those are just very personal to each person, how you experience it, right? You experience it probably in a very different way than I do. And
Mhm.
the only way you learn how that discernment happens is through experience, right? Because you start recognizing the pattern over, many sessions, or, even working for yourself, doing your own readings. You just start feeling a certain thing, or seeing a certain thing, or hearing a certain thing, or whatever it is, however you receive information, or your spidey sense, like that little tingle in your body or whatever, that's telling you, yeah, this is good, or yeah, this is not so good. You should let it, probably push it out of the way. So I do agree with you. I think that it may not have anything to do with age. I just think that like with age comes experience. But I think like you said, a younger witch or medium um can have the same abilities, and there's some that are just so naturally gifted that they um you know can easily tell the difference without the
Yeah, but
like years and years of practice.
those are rare.
Yeah,
That's not. I feel like
those are so
very
rare.
rare.
Exactly.
Exactly, and I feel like it's definitely okay. Sometimes it worries me a little bit. To get not to like in terms of people declaring themselves as like psychics and mediums, and kind of going out and doing readings, and which is fine. But I just feel like I just worry like, okay, not everybody can just go out and just offer these things or teach other people. Like you really do have to be in the field for a while to kind of know what's there. And I feel like you said, there's like, it's a very rare instance that you can pick up that information so quickly. I mean, it could be some past life connections or whatever it is. But and I wonder as well, I mean, because we grew up in the 80s, like I wonder because I don't know if it's like we weren't as desensitized in terms of like we didn't have the internet growing up. And it
Right.
was just, even now, I do feel like I have to work really hard I have like social media detoxes and I don't watch as much TV or the news because I need to just preserve that for myself, my intuition. And I notice that when I watch a lot of TV or if I'm kind of wrapped up in what's happening on social media, it gets a little bit like, I don't say diffused, but it can influence um my abilities. But I feel like when I was younger, I was just it was like open. We were just like raw. And I feel like I don't know if it was like the time period as well. I mean, it definitely, as we know, electronics does influence our
Absolutely.
abilities to tune in. So I just wonder sometimes too, in terms of like age and experience, that also the time that we grew up in. I just feel really fortunate to grow up in that time period where we're just outside, just playing and just existing
Yeah,
out there in the
absolutely.
world without anything really, other than like Saturday morning cartoons, but we didn't really have anything else that was kind of encumbering us. We were just open. Um,
Well, I think we
I
also,
don't know. I don't know. How do you
as
feel about?
yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think, you know, when we were younger too, we were able to keep a lot more of our innocence too and our
Mhm.
naivete, which I think then helped to sort of like open up those channels more because we weren't, like you said, we weren't being bombarded with information. And I think that's like a big problem now. And I definitely feel like naturally there are times where I just don't want to get on social media at all. And I know that like, to
Mhm.
get attention, you need to be on social media a lot, all the time. And I just don't find it healthy for not only my mental health, but not healthy even for my spiritual growth and my witch practice. Um, I find that all that social media and then the bombardment also of the news, where before the news you literally had to sit down at a very specific time to watch the news or buy a newspaper. I never sat down and watched the news. My father first of all had 1010 wins on literally 24/7, so I heard the news even if I didn't want to. But
I remember that.
yeah, and it's like such an annoying like it does like that thing, like the little sound. um
Yeah.
but I definitely find that like I feel I don't know how to explain it. Almost like, when you have that feeling when you're grossed out, like that weird feeling you get in your body when something just makes you just like turn to your stomach. That's the feeling
Mhm.
I get when I'm on social media too much or I'm watching too much TV or anything like that, where it feels like then it's dampening my psychic and medium abilities, where it's almost like throwing a sheet over me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like a
Mhm.
dampener. And And it's one of the reasons I really actually try to not be on social media as much. I think, you know, a lot of us during, lockdown and COVID, were kind of that was like our entire social world, right? Like everything was social media because we weren't connecting with people in real life. And I think it changed the way we interact with humans so much that now we're like trying to relearn, especially those of us who didn't grow up with that, are trying to relearn that you don't need to be on that and that it's actually harmful, especially when you are someone who is a medium or a psychic, um, or a witch or anybody that's working energetically and generally. I think being on these things, being bombarded with information can color it not necessarily by falsifying information you're getting, but kind of almost like I said, like throwing a sheet over yourself and like not being able to see or hear. That's what it feels like to me anyway.
I agree. It's the dampener. I definitely feel that for sure. And definitely, it kind of lowers your vibration if you're constantly hearing, and if as well as certain media outlets only report about certain things, and they stuff it down your throat, and
Mhm.
the things that possibly really do matter they don't talk about. And I don't know. I just feel like I've made that decision maybe like 2021, maybe like during the pandemic, because I took a I think I took a break, like 9 months off of it, just for myself, and it was amazing. I was able to read. My attention span increased.
Yeah.
I felt like I was back, like, we talked about, growing up. I felt like I was back in that time where I was just like out, and I wasn't like, I would sometimes even forget my phone, quote unquote, forget my phone, and not bringing with me, or just take my phone off, like literally take it off, when I was in a cafe and actually read a book or just watch what was happening around me. And that was really nice, just to do that. So yeah, I mean, I feel like and then having to come back first, be on social media as a business owner, but I do have tactics, like I post ahead of time and I schedule post, and I have designated times that I'm on there and then I'm off. Like I don't want to be on there. Like you said, it's just too much information. And
Mhm.
I am at this point now where, not that I can't learn anything. I feel like the people who I need to learn from, or I can learn from, I'm reading something, or reading a book or an article. Um, the people I follow, I always feel like things will show up when they need to, and everything else is just superfluous. I just feel like I don't need to have this constant reminder of information that, like, yeah, like I I know about the moon cycles. I don't need to see it constantly on my feed,
Right.
so I'll just kind of mute that, or it's just too much information. And I get it. I get when people are really excited about something and they want, oh, I just learned about this thing. Let me make, I'm so excited, which is great. But I'm at this point now, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm okay. I get it. I get it. And I don't really need to see all of that all the time. And that's okay. Like for me, I feel like it works, and it just helps me, it keeps me sane in
Yeah,
this
no,
crazy world.
I agree.
Um,
I agree. I definitely
yeah,
feel like
but
part of it is like the being present and being mindful that gets you know, dampened again, or where it takes away from that, because you can't be present and mindful if you're on your phone all the time on social media, right? You're in your head at that point, and that's not a good thing. You can't be in your head all the
yeah,
time and just sort of like be entertained by this thing without ever uh having quiet time to read, or just to be, or to meditate. And it's
mhm,
so important, especially when you're doing mediumship or psychic work, and especially if you're doing it for, a witchcraft practice, or if you're doing it where you're seeing clients, you want to be able to remain present, right? That's so important, and to be mindful. So you need, because it's also a matter of being able to not only control your own mind from like straying, but also to control the flow of information coming into you from, a download. And I think that like social media and stuff like that kind of interferes with that training of your mind too,
for
where
sure.
where it adds to the anxious monkey brain. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
How do you feel about like living in Brooklyn, and or just in a city? Um, I think for me, my clear audience is definitely is like one of my strongest clairs at the moment. And I've noticed we'll talk about what the clairs as well, but I've become super sensitive to noise. And when I have sessions, I literally have like construction happening in front of my house. I have kids playing and other construction in the back of the house. I've actually, it's been quite annoying to actually have to discern, and actually, people playing music and cars racing and all this kind of stuff. And I'm trying to have clients and trying to center my brain. And it was annoying at first, but I've actually learned to quiet my mind amidst all of that. Even though it is quite frustrating, because it would be perfect to have quiet. But as we know, living in a city, or living with humans in general, people are, you know, selfish and in their own worlds. And
And
they're like, I
noisy.
want to play my music as loud as possible outside and just stand there, or I'm going to slam doors. I'm going to, I was like, ah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm very sensitive to noise, but I don't know how you feel about like just life in general, like how you interact with deal with clients, as well as having to deal with noise.
I say a same thing. I've been clairvoyant and clairaudient all of my life,
Mhm.
and clairsentient, but the clairaudience in the last, maybe I would say in the last 6 years, or more maybe, you know, has grown so much that I am extremely sensitive to sound. So living in a city, I definitely, and I grew up in New York. So I'm used to New York and I'm used to New York noise. But the thing is, New York has changed so much that we have many more people now too. So where before you could escape and maybe find a little, oasis somewhere, it could be in the park or whatever, that you had that quiet time. Apartment living in New York definitely is not a quiet thing. I'm very lucky. I live in a quiet apartment. I lucked out with my neighbors. Um, but all that stuff definitely would rattle me sometimes, where I would lose my my connection or my ability to channel information because I was being interrupted by these outside noises. And I started realizing, I was like, well, I feel like it's also sort of like a test for me. Like, how can you
Mhm.
overcome distraction? Because then you're not being present. The idea of being present during a meditation or during reading is a skill that you have to develop. And I also have the other part of me that is that I have an anxiety disorder. So that factors in to that noise being very jarring for me, and will sometimes interfere with my reading stuff. So in those times, I definitely know that I need to increase my meditation to be able to then to have the tool to deal with noise. I have my other issue too is bright lights, especially at nighttime. I
Mhm.
can't, and I think that's a clairvoyant thing too, where I have a hard time with brightness. Like my sunglasses can never be dark enough. As much as I love the sun, but it bothers me a lot, like extremely a lot. I don't know if you had that same experience, like with bright lights.
Yeah, I can. That's what I was thinking. Like when I was younger, it used to be more the clairvoyance. That was my strongest one. So the lights would definitely bother me. It was interesting. Like I said, the clairaudience for me has gotten really heightened where um, I'm able to pick up. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse because we can pick up things from other beings. And when I'm in the Akashic records or doing psychic readings, it's really easy for me to access. But then in the waking world, I hear everything. But I've actually started like working with it. Like I'm upstate now, and my thing is listening to bird sounds.
Mhm.
I do this in Brooklyn as well,
So
and
do
I
I.
can discern what's a sparrow. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm like I can actually hear a sparrow song. I remember I was able to trace. There's a particular sparrow that comes from Canada and it came to the Northeast and it brought its certain rhythm of sound
Oh.
that it started changing the way the birds in the Northeast were singing their sound. So I can actually hear like one from Canada and one from like Maine or something. And it was just interesting. I was like, so that's actually like a good thing. But at other times I can also hear someone blasting their music 5 blocks away. That's really loud for me. Or if everybody
Yeah.
else is like, I don't hear that. And I'm like, what? Like, you not hear that? It's like it's right here. Um, so yeah, I mean, the lights, yeah, it can definitely, um, yeah, I'm always like having the curtains drawn and things like that. But yeah, it's interesting, like how, like when we strengthen it, like you said, I feel like it is a test. Like, um, I do like the focusing more on meditation and the really centering ourselves, grounding. We talk about this all the time. Like grounding is so
Yeah.
important in our craft and what we're doing
Mhm.
in psychic
Mhm.
work, mediumship work. It's so pivotal, which I definitely do need to do more of, definitely more of. Um, but that's been really helpful too. Like definitely I would sometimes if I have time, I would like meditate for like an hour or so. If like I can like go into like a trance state and just sit there. but it does help. I feel so much better afterwards. I'm like, okay, this is what I needed. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It definitely when you do especially those longer meditations, or even if you just do a small meditation every single day. And I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of days that I don't meditate, and I'm not gonna be like I'm like some amazing guru
Mm-hmm.
or something. I definitely find that,
Yeah.
but the more you meditate, and sometimes those longer meditations help to sort of just help you go, all right, those noises aren't the biggest deal. All that the external stuff it's fine. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a big deal. And you sort of don't react to it like you normally would react to, which is kind of, I think, part of maybe a lesson that we've even set for ourselves. Like, yes, we've become more sensitive because of our clairs, but it's because we keep raising our vibration, right? That our clairs are becoming stronger, but also at the same time, we probably knew coming into this life that this would be happening, and we just needed to kind of set that almost as a lesson for ourselves to learn to wash away or push away all the external stuff that's just not important while we do our work, and then it can maybe filter
Mm-hmm.
into our regular life too, right? So if we learn to do it in our work, then maybe in our regular life, we can filter that stuff out too, and it doesn't bother us. And I think that's probably a lesson that maybe both of us even have set for ourselves for this lifetime.
I agree. I've asked about this many times, and it's interesting too. What also helps for me is I would tap into the actual people making the noise, right? And that's really helped because for me to see it in a logical way, like, okay, why are they doing this, right? So I remember I was like, okay, so where I live, there's like this new car repair shop opened up in the corner, and it's these young guys, and it's all about like the booming
Mhm.
systems and the revving engines, and I get it. I don't really get it, but I get it, right? Um, I'm not a 22-year-old man, right? So I started tapping into the main guy, which I see him driving up and down, just back and forth. And I was like, hey, what is this? What is this deal? What is this issue? And what came out was like, um, the noise like helps him to first feel good about himself. And secondly, it was something about like, I would say like childhood trauma, but he's like blocking out noise. Like that was his way of blocking out noise when his parents were arguing, something like that. So this is
Mm.
something that's carried over when he was an adult, but now he gets, I don't say rewarded for it, but like this is something that he can actually put into a hobby. So I was like, oh, and I see it that way. And I'm like, okay, he's not just trying to be outright a jerk. This is his coping. And when I
Right.
started seeing it that way, I was like, I don't feel as like angry about it. It's more like, okay, it's just so I give him I give people names. I'm like, oh, that's just Jeff with his coping mechanisms. Okay. I don't take it personal. Right. So something like that too kind of helped me to um to not like make it so overwhelming. So that combination kind of helped me. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because then what you're doing is tapping in to see why they're doing it. And then you can look at it through a compassionate lens, right? And looking
Yeah.
at it through a compassionate lens softens your reaction to it, right? So I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um oh, so actually I want you to tell me a little bit about the hopping back onto earthbound spirits. Um, can you tell me a little bit more about the guy who lives in your home? Because I know we've talked about this in the past out off the podcast, but I think it would be really cool to hear it.
Oh, the guy in upstate or the guy in Brooklyn?
No, the guy in Brooklyn in your home that you knew him when you were
In
5, and
Brooklyn.
then you
Oh,
told him the business, now
yes. Yes, okay. So he's still there. We had to like refurbish the house. So it's like a project that we're still doing to have tenants there. So I'm there helping to manage the house. And yeah, I'm back and he's just like, oh, it's you. And I'm like, yeah, it's me. And I'm not like I'm not the same 5-year-old. I know my stuff now and I know how to protect myself. And it was funny because I was trying to clear the house when I first moved back in, and I use the Bible for bibliomancy to say a verse that will help to clear that energy of the space. So I kind of using bibliomancy. I kind of scanned through the Bible, and he decided to pick the verse that said like it was of course a small chapter, but like witchcraft is evil, thou shalt burn all witches. And I was like, haha, so funny. You're so hilarious. We're laughing now. And I was just like, yeah, good good one. And I just did like, so he's like he tests me, he tries it, and like even like when I'm doing like just creating like bundles for myself. I was making like just wrapping some mugwort, and he would like sometimes like dust it off the table. He does like really weird things, and I'm just like, I feel like he's, I don't know if he's like really Christian or something, but I don't think he likes the fact that I'm like, this is what I do, and I'm not doing it to hurt you. Because actually, we have a compromise. He We have a back room in the kitchen upstairs where I'm at, and he likes to stay there. So when I'm staging the place, he doesn't like it when I stage where he is. So I told him, okay, you stay here. I won't stage it, and we're good. Right. So I just do not stage that area, and he stays away from me. And we have a compromise, right? Because I'm just like, well, I'm not going anytime soon, and I know you're not going anytime soon, but we have to live together. And I don't know if it burns him. I don't know what it is, but I'm just like, okay, I won't stage the place, but just don't throw my stuff around. Don't like, try to throw shade at me. And we're good. Right. So
That's
yeah,
kind of
this is my
awesome
ongoing
though.
story with this.
That
He's an interesting,
you were
he
able
likes to get in.
sorry. So it's like it's kind of awesome that you were able to
That's okay,
just
guys.
like lay down some compromising rules, and it worked. That hardly ever works.
Oh my gosh. Because I just came in, I was just like, no, I mean, I think because I've had experience with him in the past where he just scared the crap out of me. I was like, no, I'm not scared of you this time around. I'm not. So you can try all you want, but we're not doing this. I mean, you said about the names, he does give me fake names. I have tried. He's given me all sorts of, and I remember we were spelling it. And he gave me some sort of like kooky name. And I was like, I know that's not your name. Like, I'm not even going to try anymore. I don't care who you are, just leave me alone. I was just like, since you want to be funny, you want to, give me some kooky name that doesn't make any sense. Okay, we can play that game, but you're gonna leave me alone. That's what we're gonna do. Right? So
Oh my
yeah,
God.
that's my connection with him.
Oh wow. So thank you, Malorine, for your ghost story. That was amazing actually. I like your tough girl, no BS, no nonsense kind of attitude towards this guy bothering you. So that was part one of our chat on mediumship. You can find part two on your favorite streaming service. And now for this week's reading for the collective. So today, actually, I'm going to pull a card for the collective of Animal Spirit Guide. I work closely with the animal spirits, so for me, this is something that I would love to share with you. And for the collective this week, the snake came out, and I think that's really apropos, especially coming up on spring. Um, spring is about transformation and new things coming in, and the snake represents that. In general, where a snake sheds its skin and starts anew, has fresh skin again, and it's in that constant transformation. And I feel like definitely the collective is going through a new transformation, where we're going to see a lot more people coming into their gifts, and we are going to see a lot of new faces or old faces really coming into the limelight, where we weren't seeing that before. And, you know, I think it's also the snake coming in for the collective. It wants to share the gift of being able to go through transformation without having it be painful, without it having to really be a problematic process. Instead, we should be embracing it. Transformation is a great thing. Sometimes something that may look negative at the moment, turns out to be something that was for your best good. And um, Snake's gifts to us are that we should really just focus on the process of transformation and not necessarily on the full outcome of it, because the process is just as important than what the outcome is. And again, even if it's not what you thought it would be, or what it could turn into something amazing, it's okay. The transformation was there for a reason, for the collective. We need to keep moving in our spiritual growth, and large transformations happen all the time for us. And definitely, since we are in cycles all the time, um and the beginning of the wheel of the year is coming up, it's a perfect animal spirit guide to help us through the transformation from winter into spring. So yeah, so that's my reading for the week. And Malorine also would like to share her reading.
Yeah, thank you, Violet. Um, that's awesome. I love that we got the snake, especially this week, being that we have so many powerful astrological placements happening. I mean, we have the new moon in Aries, we have the equinox coming in, which is, like you said, the start of the wheel of the year, Ostara, which is starting this off. And of course, we have Pluto entering Aquarius, which is Pluto's all about the transformation. So when you said snake, I was like, ding, ding, ding. Perfect week for that.
Perfect.
Um, exactly. And coincidentally, I also got I pulled out three cards, three tarot cards, and I have Death, which of course is a very Martian card, and Mars being the original ruler of Scorpio, kind of gives us the same energy of this of shifting and transformation, being able to let go of, like you said, the old version of us, and welcoming in this new beginning. We also have the King of Cups reversed, which is also very interesting. Again, another card of Scorpio, and it's reversed, which is also kind of showing to be able to manage our emotions, especially as we have the sun entering Aries, we have a new moon in Aries, which is already very fiery and in our faces and direct. And we have Pluto changing sign into Aquarius. So this is a very, very powerful week. And it might be good to temper our emotions and to make sure that we're thinking twice before we speak, especially as we're changing as people, as we're when a major planet like Pluto changes sign, no one, it's almost like death. Like no one can escape the grasp, the hands of this change. So I do feel like, kind of giving yourself grace and giving other people grace as they're also transforming and changing. And just realizing that this is a new 20-year cycle, so it's like not rushing off and just me making these determining uh, factors or deliberations right away, and giving it time, like giving it space and time to percolate and to shift in our minds, and just even our relationships with people are going to shift as well. In between that, the King of Cups reversed and Death, we have the Wheel of Fortune reversed, which is another interesting, again, talking about the Wheel of the Year, which I think is also a little bit of a foretelling about these changes in mood and changes in our environment, and to try to hold back any kind of overly direct communication that's unnecessary, speaking with compassion, and still kind of maintaining, okay, we're working through things, and so are other people. So yeah, I think that snake energy definitely translates. And like I said, Pluto going into Aquarius it's huge. And Yeah, this is definitely the shift that we're moving into, especially with spring Ostara coming in, tightly on its heels. Um, Pluto's bringing big changes for us. So yeah, this is what I got. I think our readings are in alignment.
Yeah, I agree. I think the snake actually is a really perfect one for exactly what you just said too. And I really love what you said, like, transformation with grace. And I think that's kind of like what the snake actually embodies. Like when they are going through their change, they're not like freaking out or anything. It's truly with like
Mhm.
grace that they're doing it. And I think what you just said actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, thank you. And I always think about that. Like I love looking at snakes, and I think they're so regal in how they do things. They kind of shake off their skin like it's no big deal.
Mhm.
Where everybody else around them is the one that's freaking out, like, oh my God, it's a snake. And things are just like, I'm cool. I'm just like hanging out here.
It's just a new
um,
me.
so it's just, yeah, just me shedding my skin, no big deal. Um, I love this. I love this. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
If you like this podcast, please remember to rate us and leave a review on whatever streaming service you are listening on, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, so more people can enjoy it.
We appreciate you very much. This is The Witch's Tea with Malorine at Moonlight Divination.
And Violet at Violet the Green Witch.
Remember, you are magic.
And life is weird.